Hello and welcome to my breakdown of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, or as I like to call it, Sabrina Witch, the new one. This breakdown assumes you have already seen this show, so if you care about spoilers, watch the show first. If not, here we go. You may be wondering what drove me to watch the show and then create this. Well, I was looking for some good supernatural type shows earlier this year, and a few of my friends at work recommended this to me because they thought it was good and I thought I would like it. Boy, were they wrong. Noting how bad it was, I decided to hop over to Google and take a look at the ratings, thinking I couldn't possibly be the only one who thought it was bad. Oh dear God. No! This has prompted me to make a breakdown showing exactly all the problems with the show and why I felt insane while slogging through both seasons. To clarify a little on that last statement, at the time of writing only 2 seasons have been published with season 3 on the horizon. In this breakdown, I will be going through the episode scene by scene, and pointing out things that I think are good, like a lot of the setups for characters in terms of establishing them and defining them, and things I think are bad, like the dialogue, the defined rules of magic, and the follow-through on those rules. As I'm writing this, I have the transcripts of the episode up on one tab, and the actual episode on Netflix on another, to make sure everything I say is as accurate as it can be. I'm also doing this so I stick directly to what is presented to us in the script. Within this video, I will be using a combination of objective and subjective viewpoints. I would like to think I use the objective points to support my subjective points, but if I ever don't do that, I'm sure you'll point it out in the comments, and for that, I thank you. So without further ado, here is Episode 1 of Sabrina Witch. So, we open with Sabrina introducing the setting through narration, and some nice visuals. We see a movie theater screening of Night of the Living Dead, and Sabrina with friends of hers. Afterwards, Discount Grant Gustin comes out of the movie and expresses that he doesn't understand why the zombies walked so slow, establishing that he's someone who either is dumb, or he just wasn't paying attention to the movie he was watching. I'm guilty of that. I didn't pay much attention to Aquaman when I was watching it, as I was enamored with the girl sitting next to me. Sabrina explains why they were walking so slow to establish she's into all that ooga booga stuff. It also uses specific language to insinuate that she's reasonably smart.
Fast-moving zombies is a relatively new concept in horror. Earlier incarnations assumed that reanimated corpses were afflicted by rigor mortis, and as such, moved slowly.
Sabrina catches a glimpse of some football players and gives a friend of hers a perturbed look. Keep that in mind, I'll come to it later. She then runs into a teacher at the screening, and they have a minor conversation expressing surprise that the teacher, Missy from Doctor Who, is there. When they stop their conversation, move outside, then continue their conversation in which Sabrina invites Missy to a dinner where they all talk about the movie afterwards. We then get a scene where her and her friends are breaking down the movie they just saw to establish the other 2 friend characters. They talk about the movie's themes, establishing the audience the show is trying to cater to. After that, we see Sabrina and Harvey walking home laughing and kissing to establish that they are together in a relationship. We learn that Sabrina's birthday is that Friday, and that she can't do anything on that day with him because she has plans. Harvey then brings out her birthday present and confesses his love. She reciprocates, says goodnight, and excitedly goes into her house and finishes the night. We also get a scene of Missy driving home, almost running into a girl on a long stretch of road in the rain at night. She then offers the almost roadkill rain girl shelter in her cottage, as well as clothing and food. It is at this point I would like to point out that Missy is acting very creepy, and not comforting at all. Missy talks about the witch hunt that took place in the town of Greendale, and Roadkill asks how Missy knows this. Missy says that she's a teacher, and Roadkill asks if she has a student named Sabrina. Missy immediately says Sabrina Spellman, then asks if Roadkill knows Sabrina Spellman. I find it odd that the teacher immediately knows Roadkill is referring to our Sabrina and not some other Sabrina. While it's not a very common name, there are still 94,102 people with the name Sabrina, and we can't rule out that there aren't any other people in that town named Sabrina. Regardless, the girl then kills Missy once she finds out that she knows Sabrina and takes a shape. She says that she will deliver Sabrina unto the Dark Lord. After this, Sabrina gasps awake in fear. Unable to get back to sleep, she counts the days until her birthday and reminisces about her parents. She then decides to look out of her window. It is at this moment a bat decides to break through her window into her room. Sabrina sees the bat flopping on her floor like a fish out of water with one of its wings broken, and decides to put it out of its misery while muttering some Latin.
Absent omen.
In the next scene, we get some more character establishments for Sabrina's family, as well as finding out that Sabrina and Fam are witches. We learn that her parents died, and that she's being taken care of by her aunts, Zelda and Hilda, with the assistance of her cousin Ambrose. We also learn through dialogue that she has a birthday celebration known as a dark baptism, that was also on her calendar in the last scene. Her Aunt Hilda gives her a drink to purify her body before her baptism, while her Aunt Zelda insists that she pick a familiar, which in this universe is a goblin that assumes the form of an animal. Sabrina suggests, instead of choosing a familiar from a catalogue which she finds dehumanizing, she's going to let a goblin choose her. Before Zelda can object, Hilda says she thinks that's a wonderful idea. Then, Zelda asks if Sabrina has chosen her witch name. Apparently, after you're baptized in this religion, you can change your name entirely, even though everyone in the family has the same surname. I bring this up because Sabrina chooses two names for herself, Edwina Diana, in order to honor her dead parents. Now, having a double name isn't too out of the ordinary, such as Marianne, but it can beg the question what other people's names were before they became witches or warlocks. Minor detail though, nothing bad or good here, just interesting. After pride is distributed amongst her parental figures, we see her burying the bat she killed in the previous night in the pet cemetery of her family's property. After she's done, she casts a glance into a distant forest with a look of concern. Her cousin, who has accompanied her to this burial because he has nothing better to do, sees her staring into the forest and asks,
"Penny dreadful for your thoughts, cousin?"
This is the beginning of a series of inversions of common sayings. I do have a problem with this because in various instances it can make sense.
It's my state and given right to kill you as many times as I please.
In many others, it sounds incredibly forced.
Let's get the heaven out of here, Sabrina.
Sabrina expresses that the bat isn't the first dark omen she's seen, and Ambrose asks if she's having doubts about her dark baptism. He then reassures her that everything will be fine when it happens, as well as reiterating the benefits of becoming a witch. He then asks if she said goodbye to her human friends, which tells us as the audience that once she becomes a witch, she can no longer interact with the human world in any meaningful way. She says she's waiting for the right time, and he says there won't be a right time. She then says that she's missing her human friends already. Ambrose relates to her, saying that he misses everything because he's been under house arrest for the past 75 years. In the next scene, we see Sabrina cast a summoning spell for her familiar. After she finishes calling forth the spirits of the forest, 3 women step out from behind trees. They are dressed in older-looking clothing and start mocking Sabrina. The way this scene is set up portrays these 3 entities known as Prudence, Dorcas, and Agatha as forest spirits. They question if she is being baptized, say she doesn't belong among which kind, surround her and cast some sort of spell, then suddenly disappear. The disappearance also indicates that these people are in fact forest spirits and not real people. Remember this, I will be coming back to it.
Suck you bitches.
After this exchange, Sabrina is seen at school rushing to the showers. Her friend greets her, and she dismisses her, saying that she stepped in some poison ivy on her way to school, and that she needs to wash it off. While she's washing herself, she's muttering a counter curse to negate the effects of the spell the supposed forest spirits put on her. After her shower, she hears her friend, Susie, crying. Sabrina asks Susie why she's crying, and Susie reveals that she's been sexually assaulted by 4 football players. We then smash cut to Sabrina telling the principal about Susie's being bullied. The principal asks for the names of whomever committed the assault, when Sabrina admits that she doesn't know. She then says that she can guess, or demands, that the principal bring in the whole team, to which the principal retorts that she is suggesting a witch hunt. Sabrina dismisses that, saying what she's suggesting is not a witch hunt, but asserts that Susie doesn't feel safe anymore. The principal then says that if that's how Susie truly feels, she should find another school. Now, the way I understand the situation that is being presented to me on screen is that the principal cannot punish the entire team for the rumored acts of 4 people on that team. 1. He doesn't even know if the information he's getting is accurate because it's second-hand. 2. When he asks for the names of the perpetrators, there are none, which means there is no way he can know for sure that he would be punishing the right people. 3. While I'm not saying that his suggestion that Susie find another school is the best thing he could have said, I think that specific line is meant to say that if Susie doesn't think the situation warranted attention, Sabrina shouldn't be bringing attention to it. On 2 of these points, I completely agree with the principal. He cannot punish students because someone is guessing they've committed an act of sexual assault. On the 3rd point, I believe he should have suggested Susie come to him herself to tell him what happened, so he could do something about it. This scene is meant to paint the principal as a misogynist and someone who doesn't care about the women of his student body. This is a running theme throughout the entire show, so keep that in mind. After her confrontation with the principal, Sabrina laments to her boyfriend, Harvey, that what happened to Susie is wrong. She asks him to ask around and find out who did that to her friend, and he happily obliges. He does note that it'll be difficult because he's not on the team, and Sabrina takes this as another assertion that nothing can be done. Missy, who is walking behind them and now looks completely different from her first appearance, offers Sabrina help. When I say she looks completely different, I don't mean that she looks like a different person is playing her, but she went from a woman that wears layers and glasses, keeps her hair in a bun, and is very shy and not outspoken at all, to a woman who wears her hair down, in a sweater dress without her glasses, and has quite a bit more self-confidence than the character we were shown before. I bring this up because no one in the show thinks this sudden character shift is odd. At all. Anyway, we transition to a scene in Missy's office, whom I will be referring to as Miss Wardwell henceforth, to keep anyone from being confused. In Miss Wardwell's office, Sabrina again laments her frustrations about not getting justice for Susie, and Wardwell tells Sabrina that she should punish the principal by terrorizing him with spiders. I'm not even joking. And to prove this, here is a dramatic reading of the scene. I'm afraid to use the real scene for fear of copyright. My heart weeps for your friend. Such a difficult thing to be going through. Yeah, it's this town, this school. There's a culture of puritanical masculinity, and Principal Hawthorne is the most intolerant, the most buffoonish, the most misogynist of all. When will the world learn? Women should be in charge of everything. Our assistant principal, Miss Glover, she wouldn't turn a blind eye to what's happening. I just wish Hawthorne would just what? Hawthorne's a bully. I wish someone would teach him a lesson. Why not you? How would that help Susie? A fish rots from the head down. Principal Hawthorne isn't an ally. If he were to take a sabbatical, say, I suspect you and your friends would come up with some way to help Susie. The problem is, Hawthorne doesn't take sabbaticals, or days off, even. He's scared of spiders, you know. Principal Hawthorne is? Absolutely terrified of them. Sabrina then steals a picture of the principal from his school yearbook for a spell later, and tells her friends about an idea to start a group, and specifies that they will meet to discuss issues that they are facing, to which her friend asks,
You mean like a club to topple the white patriarchy?
Wait, what?
I'm right there with you, buddy. Sabrina also follows up that the club will also protest and fight if need be. Roz asks how they're going to be able to do this, as the principal wouldn't let them. Sabrina says she has a plan to take care of him, but they need to do it fast. The conversation goes into a talk about her birthday. No one is curious exactly how Sabrina is going to make the principal disappear, however. They just start talking about how her upcoming birthday is the 16th, on Halloween during an eclipse. Roz insists that they have to have a big celebration for it. Sabrina deflects the idea and suggests they focus on the club, and they start contemplating names for it. My first question is, how is no one curious about how Sabrina is going to get rid of the principal? What do they think she's going to do? Somehow secretly tie him up for a day so she can get her club approved? Then release him without him knowing it was her? I mean, we know she has magic, but her friends don't. So what are they assuming? Some sort of contest scam? How is she going to do this and reasonably explain to her friends what she did without telling them she's a witch? Either way, after this, we see Wardwell talking to a bird about Sabrina in a spooky manner. After Wardwell's ominous speech, we cut to Hilda picking up the phone at the house, which is also a mortuary. A detail I forgot to mention earlier. But this will explain how the Witch Sisters get various ingredients for spells and make money. Hilda is getting a call from a family in the town to set up a funeral for their son. He's been stabbed to death. Hilda goes to tell Zelda what the call was about after she hangs up. After Hilda tells her, Zelda asks if the parents want an open or closed casket. Hilda says they didn't get that far because it was a very recent stabbing. Zelda says even if they can't harvest the cadaver for its skin, they can use the blood for Sabrina's baptism. We then see the people who had just called. We learn their son was adopted, and they indicate they want an open casket. We then see Harvey and Sabrina walking home from school. Harvey is still trying to get Sabrina to call off her plans with rounds on her birthday so she can spend time with him. Despite what we can assume has been weeks of her saying she can't do anything that night, he's still pestering her. She then reveals that after her birthday, she's never going to be able to see him again. Harvey then gets upset and asks her why, and she says the lie that Ambrose told her to feed her friends as to why she's leaving.
I'm moving, Harvey. I'm leaving Baxter High and going to a boarding school in Connecticut.
Harvey immediately gets suspicious of Sabrina and asks her for the name of the school, and she draws a blank. She draws a blank on a lie that she has been planning to tell for at the very least weeks, at the most years, but she can't come up with either a made-up name or the name of a real all-girls boarding school. All girls, so we can understand why she wouldn't be allowed to see Harvey at all. Because we need a reason for Harvey to accuse Sabrina of hiding something, so that she can reveal that she is a witch. I'm pointing this out, because this all could have been avoided if Sabrina, or anyone in her family for that matter, had put any effort into her cover story as to why she's leaving. They had at the least 16 years to prepare this story, and none of the four of them decided to put any more depth into the cover story than just stating it's a private school in Connecticut.
What have you told your mortal friends? That you're being transferred to some posh boarding school in Connecticut?
It's absolutely asinine to think that they had so much time to prepare a believable story for her to just disappear from town that they didn't come up with one that holds any water. This is children's sitcoms level of stupidity. Only on those sitcoms, they don't have years to figure out the lie. They have seconds. After him imploring very persistently to tell him what's going on, she says maybe it's better if I show you. She takes Harvey to a random spot in the woods and starts talking about the witch hunt that happened in the town. Then says that she was born in a random spot in the woods. She reveals she's a half-witch, which at this point is a distinction without a difference, and Harvey understandably doesn't believe her. So instead of showing him by, performing magic in front of him to show she's a witch,
Wingardium Leviosa.
she just tells him a story about her birth? And then when he doesn't believe her, what does she do? She wipes his memory. She casts a spell on him to make him forget the conversation. So, you're really making Sabrina out to be a stand-up girl that I want to see succeed in her endeavors. This is a villain's thing to do, not a hero's. In Legion, David does this, the main character.
What happened?
But he's not seen as the hero. At this point in the story, he's seen as a villain, and he's treated as such.
What?
It's treachery.
that you don't want to believe me, but we want to help you.
Let me out now!
David Heller, your treachery has been discovered. You will allow treatment, or we will be forced to terminate.
You're gonna kill me?
Run. Get out.
No. No. I want to hear you say it. That you're gonna kill me if I don't let them turn me into something different. Something easy. Something clean.
David, you drugged me and had sex with me.
No, that's not.
Instead, this show is going to treat this event as totally justified and okay in this situation. To clarify my position on Harvey's mind wipe, the biggest reason I have a problem with it is she does it to manipulate him into staying in a relationship with her. I'm also frustrated at this because Harvey would have been the perfect vessel for us as the audience to have learned about the witching world because he knows just as much as us about it all.
Sabrina, what? Where are we?
After this, we see Sabrina at home all upset, and Ambrose asks her why. Sabrina explains what just happened and expresses that she wishes she could bring Harvey with her. Ambrose says she knows they can't do that, because I guess witches and humans are different species? They never really explained that, other than the whole "a veil will fall between you and the mortal world" thing, but that seems to be more of a metaphorical veil than anything, considering her father and mother were able to have relations. But that's what we're left to assume. Sabrina then asks for Ambrose's help in getting rid of a principal for a day, in order for her to do something that can help her friends before she leaves forever. He agrees, and she goes inside. Inside, she expresses her frustrations with the weird sisters. You remember those forest spirit girls from earlier? That's what they're called. As well as stating that everyone in the Academy of the Unseen Arts is elitist. Hilda asks why they would curse Sabrina for no reason, except if Sabrina told her what had happened, she would know why they had cursed her. And we have reason to assume that she did tell Hilda about the conversation Sabrina had with the sisters, because that's what they were talking about before the audience came in. For anyone unclear about why she was cursed, it was because they don't like her, and they don't want her in their school. They cursed her to keep her out. That much would be obvious to a 5-year-old. Zelda assumes that the sisters are jealous because Sabrina is daughter of a high priest. Hilda has Sabrina break an egg to tell what kind of curse was put on her, even though she thinks she got it off when she showered in school. Hilda insists and Sabrina obliges, and we learn that she has a blood curse. It's very bad and would kill her if left untreated. She suggests a remedy to rid her of the curse. While Sabrina starts to head upstairs for her bath, Zelda and Hilda start to exchange concerned looks. Before Sabrina goes upstairs, she says the sisters indicated that her parents' deaths weren't accidental. Zelda dismisses that, and we learn that Edward was giving a lecture at the Vatican when their plane went down. She then tells Sabrina to go upstairs and take her... I'm sorry, what happened to your American accent? Sabrina accepts this and goes upstairs, and Hilda and Zelda go back to their brooding concern. They even step close to each other to exchange these looks when Sabrina starts heading upstairs. After this, we see Sabrina taking a bath when she has a vision of her parents. In this vision, she follows them to some sort of altar, where there are 2 babies. She decided to look at their feet for whatever reason, and sees that one baby has normal feet, and the other has cloven feet. This is meant to set up some sort of foreshadowing, or be some sort of symbolism, but that is never made clear at all. I say this because I have seen both seasons, and I can come up with at least 2 different things this could mean off the top of my head. After she sees this, she wakes up back in the bathtub, and we shift scenes to her and Ambrose about to cast a spell. Ambrose makes a comment on how this usage of magic is out of her character, but she just dismisses it with desperate times, and they continue to cast the spell. Then comes a visual which I can comfortably say was unnerving to watch. The spell they cast gave the principal a severe infestation of spiders, to the point where they were crawling into his ears, nose, and mouth. Now the intent of this spell was to mildly traumatize them.
We'll only mildly traumatize him then.
But this is more than mild. I will play a clip to show what I mean. For those who are a bit sensitive to these sorts of things, here is the timestamp to skip to. I think this would be scarring for anyone, regardless of any pre-existing arachnophobia. I am honestly surprised the principal didn't die of an anxiety-induced heart attack. Regardless, after the spell had been cast, Sabrina retires to her room with a big smile on her face. This woman is a psychopath. Look at her face. When she gets into her room, she sees that her window is open. She immediately puts her guard up and asks who's there, and we see what we can safely assume is a goblin, based off the conversation that follows, standing behind a mirror. We learn that Sabrina now has a familiar in the form of a black cat. Finally, we have the reason I decided to watch this show in the first place. A snarky black cat that always has the best or worst thing to say in any given situation for comedic relief. Except, he doesn't talk. At all. Ever. This is more disappointment than a criticism. Even though I've never seen the original Sabrina Witch, I know that the cat is a staple of the show.
Did you just speak?
No. It's the dementia setting in.
Oh, thank God.
And they decided not to use him at all. The next morning, we see the whole family eating breakfast, and Zelda asks Sabrina why about almost every aspect of her familiar. The name, the cat chose it, and why feral are not bred for service, their partners. They also comment on how Sabrina is almost ready for her baptism. Sabrina then asks if they can postpone her baptism so she can set up her club at school for women protecting women.
You know, sort of like a coven.
Zelda rejects this idea because her baptism was meant to happen on her 16th birthday during a blood moon, and there are no bones about it. Apparently the timing is incredibly important. I guess that's tradition or something. Sabrina also brings up that she and Harvey have taken things to the next level, and this scares Zelda, because Zelda thinks that means they've had sex. Sabrina reassures they haven't, but then asks why she needs to save herself for the Dark Lord. Now, I'm assuming this means that on the night of the baptism, the devil himself shows up to do the dirty with the person being baptized. All of Sabrina's questions in this scene are dismissed with because it is witch law, as well as we all did it. But Sabrina isn't happy with this, and wants to make an educated choice on her baptism. I can't fault her for that, as I would also have reservations about signing my soul to the devil. At the same time, however, given what we know about Sabrina, that she grew up in this culture attending Black Mass every Saturday like a good little satanic girl, why would she need more education on the subject? She should know the majority of the answers to the questions she's asked. To take it one step further and equate it to real life...
This is a show about spooky witches for eduteens.
Shut up. To take it a step further and equate it to real life, Mormons who grow up as a part of the church know more about the religion, even if they haven't been homeschooled, as this show implies all witches must be, than Sabrina knows about her religion. To get back on track, Sabrina continues to throw questions at Zelda, and she gets more and more furious with each question, at the end blaming Sabrina's mother and Hilda for corrupting her mind with these questions about the church, saying Sabrina should have been homeschooled as is tradition. After that, Zelda leaves in fury. Outside, Ambrose sees Sabrina looking into the distance frustratedly and points out that Sabrina enjoyed using her powers the night before, and says that if she doesn't go through with the baptism, all her powers will fade to nothing. Remember this. Sabrina says that she just needs to be sure of her choice, and Ambrose suggests she use something called a malum malus, or as directly translated from Latin, a bad apple. He instructs her to go to an orchard and find the oldest tree there. He says,
Go to an orchard, find the oldest tree. It'll have one. The older the tree, the more it's seen, the more it knows, the more accurate its reading of the future will be.
When I first heard this, I immediately drew a parallel between this and the forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden. That might be shallow, and I could be wrong, but that's what immediately sprang to mind for me. Because Wardwell's bird is stalking Sabrina, it reports to Wardwell that Sabrina is looking for the forbidden fruit, and this concerns her, as Sabrina might see something that would dissuade her from going through with her baptism. After the ominous conversation with Wardwell, we see Sabrina going to the principal's office to get her Girl Power Club approved. Here she learns that the principal isn't coming in that day because he's had a shock. He's probably got an exterminator searching his house up and down for spiders, while also in the hospital regaining strength from his anxiety-induced heart attack that occurred the night before. Either way, the secretary suggests that the assistant principal that we never see at all would be empowered to approve the club, and gets her on the phone. And the club gets approved. My criticism here is, wouldn't the secretary simply put the application aside to be reviewed later when the principal is back and can do his job? Why is it immediately the assistant principal's job to do both their job and the principal's job because he's had a sick day? In any case, the Girl Power Club got approved because that's how this school works. And I could be wrong. I'm basing all of this off a quick Google search of responsibilities for the assistant principal. The girls run to Susie to let her know they got their club. Susie asks if they're doing this just for her, and they basically say yes. They also came up with the name Wicca for the club, so they can have more witch connections. Now, I think that making Sabrina Wiccan and not satanic would have made the series a lot more interesting, but that would also probably drastically change the plot of the show, so I'll leave that alone for as long as this show does. After they discuss plans for spreading the word for this No Boys Allowed club, Sabrina gets called into Wardwell's office. In Wardwell's office, Wardwell confronts Sabrina about being put on as the girls' club academic supervisor without any notice, and Sabrina apologizes. Wardwell waives her apology and says that she's happy to be the supervisor if that helps put Sabrina at peace. Sabrina confirms that it does help with one thing, but expresses there's more. Wardwell asks to see Sabrina after school so she can continue helping her, but Sabrina denies the offer because she has plans. She's going apple picking. We then see Ambrose feeling up a dead body, presumably preparing it to be embalmed. The body on the table is the boy that was stabbed to death. As Ambrose is preparing the body, he notices a mark on its arm. He then says,
"There's something you should see."
to Zelda and Hilda, who are both upstairs doing things. He explains that he's called them down because the mark on the body's arm is apparently a witch's mark, which does not bleed when punctured. Ambrose then punctures the mark to prove that it is what he claims. Zelda dismisses it, saying that the blood has simply already pooled in his buttocks. Ambrose then counters, saying that if it is really a witch's mark, his death indicates the presence of witch hunters. Zelda and Hilda say that they will tell the witch council about the possibility, and see it as another reason for Sabrina to become part of the church, because
witches without covens are easy pickings.
Except Sabrina wouldn't be without a coven. She would be with her witch family, who would be protecting her, as we see they have done and will do in the series. She may not be with the church, but she certainly isn't without a coven. And Sabrina's witchiness would fade away if she doesn't join the church, according to what we've been told.
You realize your gifts, that euphoria, fade to nothing if you aren't baptized.
And she would just become immortal anyway, which would keep her from being a target. Either way, Hilda says that she thinks getting someone for Sabrina to talk to would be a good idea in order to convince her to join the church. Zelda scoffs and asks if she means the devil himself, and Hilda says not directly the devil, but as close to him as reasonably possible. Zelda then instructs Ambrose to finish the embalming, and we cut to a different scene. We see Harvey and Sabrina in a pickup truck from the 50s or 60s, matching the aesthetic of the show. Sorry, it's important that I point out that the show has a 50s and 60s aesthetic, because it will become relevant later. Even if the fact that Ambrose had a laptop in one of the earlier scenes doesn't already break the confusing time frame that they've set up. I say this because it's not just the cars that are from the 50s, it's also the landline phones, the fashion, and most of the technology. Keeping in mind that this is set in the present year. Anyway, Harvey and Sabrina are driving to the local orchard to, you guessed it, pick apples. Harvey decides that while they're there, he's going to grab some pumpkins for his house. While he's doing that, Sabrina is going to the oldest apple at the orchard. It's worth noting that this apple tree is outlandishly big, as well as being on the other side of a hay maze. Now here's the oldest apple tree in America for reference. America was created in 1797, roughly. This tree was planted in 1826. roughly 40 years after the creation of America, and it's not nearly as big as the one in the show. And that's assuming the town they're in was established around the same time as the United States, and the tree was planted around the same time, with a 40-year head start on the real-life old apple tree. Also, at maximum, that tree has a 150-year head start on the real-life tree because apples originate from Eurasia, not America. And, if you try to use the age argument, I would argue that the 200-year-old tree in Vancouver indicates that it only grows to a specific height and stays there, seeing as the conifers behind it are much taller than it is. I've heard the argument that the tree is magic, but when Sabrina was told to find the forbidden fruit, Ambrose didn't specify that the tree or the apple needed to be magic in order for the thing to tell her the future. He simply said to find the oldest tree and eat an apple from it.
Go to an orchard, find the oldest tree. It'll have one. The older the tree, the more it's seen, the more it knows, the more accurate its reading of the future will be.
Anyway, these are semantics, and the reason the size of the tree is so big is to symbolize its importance to the plot and its age. I recognize that. It's still stupid. My next criticism is why the orchard decided to separate the first tree from all the other apples on the farm. When they put down the first seed, did they say, "I know what we should do. We should put the rest of our trees way the hell over there, so years down the line, we can put a hay maze in between this tree and all the others during the Halloween when the trees get big enough?" I ask this because if they were using the old tree to produce and sell apples, they should have put it with all the other trees for farming efficiency. Or perhaps this was a family apple tree that grew before the rest of the orchard. But still, it would make more sense if they were to plant the rest of the trees around that tree for farming efficiency. Once again, I get that it's separated in order to put an obstacle between Sabrina and her objective, the forbidden fruit. I recognize that, but it's still stupid. If I were to rewrite this scene, I would have Sabrina create a dowsing rod to find the oldest apple tree in the farthest, most remote corner of the orchard where no one is around, have Harvey disappear for the same reason before the creation of the dowsing rod, and then have magical hijinks try to keep her from getting the forbidden fruit, such as Roots trying to trip her or stop her from moving forward, or perhaps Stolas swooping in with his bird brothers recreating Hitchcock's The Birds to drive her away, and then she does a spell or a thing that gives her some sort of protection. Maybe we can have Salem help her, even though he's presumably at home, and not following Sabrina around at all hours of the day. Instead, what happens is this. Sabrina goes through the hay maze, muttering a spell so she doesn't lose her way in the maze, and can get through it more efficiently. She sees a scarecrow and comments on how it's a little unsettling with the look on her face, and continues through the maze. Soon after that, the same scarecrow starts chasing Sabrina through the maze to scare her away from the fruit. We also quickly learn that Wardwell is puppeteering the scarecrow for this goal. After a very short-lived chase, the scarecrow is tackled by Salem, the cat. After the cat stops the scarecrow from chasing Sabrina, Wardwell just screams and gives up trying to keep Sabrina from the forbidden fruit. Apparently Wardwell can't do anything else despite what we come to know about her later in the show, or the currently defined rules of magic when Salem tackles the scarecrow. After that, Sabrina approaches the tree. She grabs the only red apple on this incredibly large Granny Smith tree and asks the apple if she should be baptized. This brings up another interesting point about the apples. Ambrose doesn't specify that there needs to be any specific ritual done, so would it just be random chance, or is every apple a malum malice? What happens if a witch bites into a random apple and it happens to be a malum malice? What differentiates a normal apple to a soothsaying apple? The rules here are so ill-defined that it's baffling how this actually works. Back on track, she bites into the apple and is given a vision of a rotting apple, blood on her hands, and hanging witches from a tree, all in a landscape that looks like a fire that can be seen from space is blazing just off camera. Remember this vision, as aspects of it will become very important. Also, what can be assumed to be the devil comes out of the tree and starts to chase Sabrina down with his mouth. After this, she spits the apple out of her mouth and Harvey catches up to her. I'm assuming he was either hot on her tail, or the vision took a lot longer for her to experience than we saw, because his timing is impeccable. He sees the cat hanging out with Sabrina and asks who he is, and Sabrina says he's just a stray that she's taking home with her. Then they go home. When Sabrina gets home, she asks to have a meeting in the family room because she's made a decision about her baptism. Fortunately, the entire family is already in the family room waiting for her, but they're waiting with a Victorian-looking man. The family introduces him as Father Blackwood, Satan's representative on Earth. But wait, she's been a part of this religion for her entire life. The man of the house, Zelda, is a devout follower of the church, so we can reasonably assume that she did religiously go to Black Mass every Saturday. So why doesn't she know who Blackwood is? He's a very prominent member of the local chapter of the church, but this is her first time meeting him? And later in the show, it shows that he is the only person of his position in the local church. You're telling me that she knows who the Weird Sisters are, but not who the priest is? That's a bit odd. Regardless, Satan's representative on Earth, the only equivalent I can think of is a black pope, or maybe an anti-pope, remarks on how special she is and says that he's heard she's been having doubts about her baptism. He insists that can't happen and then says,
"Let us see what I can do to convince you."
Why would you trust anything that man says after an opening like that? That just tells you that anything that comes out of his mouth next is a lie. Also on his part, why would you say that? That's a big old red flag the size of Texas that everything you're going to say is a lie. All you need to do is ask her what her questions are and then lie about the answers to persuade her to go through with the baptism. Not telegraph to her that you're manipulating her. This show has established how smart she is, so she should be able to see through a facade like this. Except she doesn't see through this, and believes everything Blackwood says. Remember in the beginning of this episode when the show established that Sabrina was smart? Guess that went out the window. Anyway, that is how the episode ends. This will undoubtedly be the shortest video in this series. In the next episode, we'll get to see the actual Dark Baptism. Thank you for watching part 1 of what is going to be a series of breakdowns for every episode of the new Sabrina Witch series. I'm going to be doing a breakdown of this style for every episode of the show. As I said before, when writing this, only Season 2 has been released, but with Season 3 about to be released, I'm sure this series will bleed all the way until Season 4 comes out, which will be fun. That being said, I will be releasing a series of live reactions with a friend of mine to Season 3 when it comes out, to serve as a sort of TLDR and or preview of my thoughts for future breakdown videos of this show. Tune in next time for the breakdown of Episode 2, The Dark Baptism. If you liked this video and want to be updated when I release my next video, please subscribe. If you liked this video and wish to support my work, please share this video among friends as well as people who say this show is well made. I also have my Patreon linked below if you want to support me financially. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Episode 1 of Sabrina Witch. Jesus Christ, that scared me.